So it's a little bit different today. I told you it was going to be a little bit different. And the reason why it's a little bit different is because I have a co-host and her name is Leah.
Hello.
And Leah is my partner in disco. So me and Leah are the co-founders of Grief Disco. And Grief Disco is exactly what it sounds like. It's a disco for the grieving. And we came up with this idea because we believe that when you are grieving, you can be heartbroken and hopeful. And over the next two episodes, we're going to explore that a little bit more. But as I said in my last podcast, the whole idea of love shortage came from my own grief. And I want to use this platform over the Christmas period to help people navigate through the tricky season. And this first episode, I wanted to involve Leah because she's a grief. Would you say you're an expert?
I'd say I'm a grief tending facilitator.
And she's a very good one, by the way. And I just think we'd have more to add together on this subject because I'm in new grief. I lost my son last year, and Leah, it's been a longer process for you for your significant losses. Is that right to say?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yes,
lost my brother and sister 10 years ago now.
right. So I think there's some perspectives there as well, because one of the things that I don't think we really understand is that although this episode is focusing on the first year of grief, um, Christmas is always going to be different. It's always going to be different. It is my Christmas now is never going to be the same.
Mm.
So I think even if you lost someone 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, and more, I think there is always going to be an element of having that festive season really jar with your grief and impact your grief. So this episode is for the people that are experiencing grief for the first time and the first year of losing someone. But I think it will apply to many other people as well. And one of the things that I wanted to also say is and I did say this in my last episode, if you don't feel like this applies to you, um, I invite you to think about when it will, because sadly, loss is a part of life. When you lose someone, what you notice is the whole world treats you differently. And I think it's because when we aren't grieving for someone, we keep far away from it because it's that sense of, oh, I've escaped. Do you know, I'm going to get away with this. But unfortunately, the uncomfort of life you can't avoid. So even if you aren't experiencing grief at the moment, I think this conversation is important. And the more conversations we have when we are not grieving about grief, we can actually help other people. So when other people are grieving around us, we've got something to add. We've got something. It's up to you. If this doesn't sound like your bag, that's fine. This is my invitation, even if you aren't grieving, to stick around because I think you will get something by the end of it. Is that fair to say, Leah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just a really human conversation, isn't it? And yeah, you're right. We're all impacted by grief and loss, or at least if we're not in the trenches right now, we know somebody who might be. And yeah, I think it's, as you say, the more conversations we can have about it, you can never prepare yourself for when, that significant loss happens. But I do think that there is something that yeah, reduces the fear, I guess, around it, because I think we're quite a grief phobic society. So yeah, the more we can normalize conversations, I think it stops that fear and that loneliness and isolation around it.
Totally. It's that feeling of fixing the unfixable. I think,
Yeah.
should we start there? Should we start about,
Mm,
I think it might be nice to start around, as we were going to talk about, the first year of losing someone. What could people do for somebody else? So I think from a friendship perspective, I know my friends they were at a loss, really. They couldn't help me, they couldn't fix me, they couldn't make things better like we want to do. In your experience, if you know someone that is going through their first year without that significant person or the person that they've lost, what do you think people can do to help someone navigate through it?
yeah, I think like having no sort of expectations and assumptions about how somebody might be feeling, um, like checking in on them and asking them what do they need, I mean, they might not know what they need, but I think, yeah, going in and really letting them know that you are thinking of them and that this first year might not be as they expect. Um, but yeah, just really being there for them in terms of asking them what is it that they need. Do they want you to, do they want space to talk about their loved one? Do they want to do something familiar?
Mm,
Maybe they might want to do something that you normally do together around Christmas time. They might want to do something different. They might not want to do anything at all. But yeah, I wrote down when I was thinking about this, like just massively lowering your expectations of them and yourself, because as you said, it is unfixable. But just letting them know that they are in your thoughts and that, yeah, not to make assumptions about how they might be feeling, but actually asking them like, how are you coping with this time of year? Like
mm.
what's going on for you, and letting them know that, yeah, whatever they're feeling is okay, you know.
Yeah, and
Um,
you can hold it. I remember you said to me, like, it wasn't at Christmas, it was very early on, and you were just like, whatever you tell me, I can handle. And I think there's something really powerful in that because sometimes, sometimes when you're grieving, you might be having a really good day, and someone can like come in and go, I know you're feeling really, and it's like, oh no, I wasn't. Do you know,
yeah.
like that that
Mm,
assumption of how someone's feeling? Because I
mm,
think a lot of people, when they know that you're grieving, they think that you just spend all your time crying,
mm.
and you actually don't. Do you
Well,
know?
no, and you can't. There's
No.
things to do.
Yeah, there's things
Yeah.
to do and there's people to look after, and especially if
Yeah.
you've got dependents. So I think that's a really valuable thing of actually asking and not making assumptions.
Mm,
And and also still sort of involving them in things. I think that's a big thing.
mm,
I know like there will be parties and gatherings and socials around Christmas. And I think sometimes we might write off that person, oh, she's not going to want to come, or he's not going to want to come. But unless you ask, I think there's an element of people going, I can't ask because it would be, I don't know what the word is really, just like, um, disrespect, yeah,
insensitive. Yeah.
insensitive, really. I can't ask them to go to a party, but they might actually want to.
Mm,
They might actually want to get out and feel a little bit better, or they might not.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and giving them options, isn't it? Like you said, okay, we can do this. And if at any point you change your mind, just say, so that there's no pressure, I
Mm.
guess. Because as you say, they might want to go, and then when it comes to it, they might not want to. So almost like, yeah, giving them a get out clause or a plan B,
Mm,
or if it gets too much, we can go somewhere quiet or we can go somewhere else. Yeah, just offering options. But I think you're right about the not being afraid, the not being afraid to actually say what you're struggling with, almost in terms of saying to them, look, I was wondering about this. I don't really know if this is what you want, but I'm gonna sort of say it anyway, and then you can decide. So so yeah, just that sharing your thought process with them, really, to know that you're just trying your best rather
mm.
than saying nothing at all.
So if I'm going to summarize, it's almost like if there's a theme here, one of the things that we want to avoid doing is fixing and encourage more communication.
Mm,
So it's like, how can I communicate in a really open, non-pressure, clear way? And I think sometimes it's sometimes really refreshing to just some of my friends have gone, do you know what, George? I don't know what to say. I don't know
yeah,
what to say.
yeah.
And that's much nicer than not saying anything.
Mm,
Um, and it feels better, do you know? And I don't want anyone to pretend um to be any different around me as well, do you
mm.
know?
Yeah, yeah, not sort of tiptoeing around you, but because you're still you, you're still
Mm,
a person. And yeah, that saying, I look, I don't know what to say here, but I just want you to know that I'm thinking of you. You're on my mind, and
yeah.
I haven't forgotten. I can remember texting a friend whose dad had died like 10 years ago, and just before Christmas, might be like Christmas Eve, and I was going back and forth whether to say, because she was on my mind, and I know after 10 years people forget. And
Mm,
I wanted her to know that I hadn't forgotten, but I also didn't want to, just as we were saying, and this is exactly my thought process, I didn't want to bring the mood down as well, because she might be absolutely fine, she might be having a really nice time. So I still texted her and I said, look, I really hope you're having a great day, but I just want you to know that I haven't forgotten. I haven't forgotten about your dad, you know? And just saying that, she got back to me and she said, oh, thanks. And then she said, oh, actually, we've just been with a little boy, we've just been to see the Christmas lights. But yeah, I just think something like saying that I haven't forgotten,
mm,
because people do forget. We all do. My God, we can't possibly hold everybody in our minds and hearts all of the time, especially, as time passes. I get that, people are not going to be on people's minds all of the time. But when you do remember, just let them know, I haven't forgotten.
mm. Yeah, that's lush. That is lovely. And 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 in a way, that's not going to lower the mood, is it? Because it's actually going to make me feel connected. It's going
Mm.
to make me feel actually connected to you. So that's not putting a downer on things, really,
Mm.
is it? Which
No,
is
no,
lovely.
I don't think it is. I think anything where, and even if it does stir a little bit of emotion, it's almost, as you say, it's that connecting emotion, isn't it? Of
Mm,
like, oh, someone's thinking of me or thinking of my dad or whatever, and yeah, because I think one of the loneliest things is that the world carries on around you, and Christmas time especially, people are busy and they've got lots to do, and planning things and that. And sometimes you can feel a bit left behind, caught up in all the madness. So for someone just to say, I haven't forgotten,
mm.
I'm with you and I'm thinking of you is enough sometimes.
With you, with your first Christmas, if you can remember, I'm sure you can. Like, can you remember how if we're talk because we're talking to the people that potentially this is their first Christmas. Do you remember things that you did that you wish you didn't, or and do you have any thoughts or sort of reflections of that time?
Well, honestly, I can't really remember. I've been thinking about this and I can't remember a lot about the Christmas at all. Um, and I know you're a bit more fresh because obviously it's
Mm.
more recent for you, but what I do remember actually more than the Christmas was the New Year. I remember the New Year's Eve. I remember the New Year's Eve. So my brother and sister died in the March, and then I don't really remember much about Christmas at all. But I remember the New Year's Eve because I think it was the first time where I had an absolute meltdown, like a massive sobbing, really, really broke my heart on New Year's Eve. Because I remember this feeling of this is the last year. This is the last year they'll ever be in my life, and I'm going into a new year and they're not coming with me. And there was like this sense of there was something was ending. It was like an ending. And I remember feeling so much lighter after it because we were actually going to round to a friend's house and there was lots of people come in. But before I went, yeah, just had this huge breakdown. So I found the new year more difficult, I think. Um, I don't really remember much about the Christmas at all.
Mm.
But I think sort of what I would say to people is it's almost like, and it's not just around Christmas, you have to sort of get to know yourself again to, things might have shifted around what your preferences, what you enjoy. You might want more quiet, or you might want to be around people. So I think it's worth taking a bit of time if you can, just to think about like, yeah, what do I really need now? And it takes courage as well. It's so much to manage, isn't it? I think it's around that I say massively lowering your expectations of yourself because grief can be really tiring. So, you might not be able to do the things that you normally would do, but also lowering the expectations of everyone around you, particularly in families. You can be all grieving differently. So you might want different things, and that's not easy to manage. There might be a bit of conflict around it. Some of you might want to do all the same traditions so that you can like relive it or feel like that person is still around. And some of you might not want to do that. So there's got to be a lot of kindness, a lot of patience, I think, around that. Maybe it's going to be a messy Christmas, like you're not going to get it right. You can't get it right anyway. But yeah, lots of patience. Yeah, managing like those relationships and how they're changing. And I put down around like radical nourishment and yeah, nurturing of yourself. So don't underestimate like how much it can take its toll on you, like physically as well, like really taking care of yourself, having more space, having more time. Um, but yeah, it might feel like a bit of a blur,
Mm.
and the perspective on it is that as much as it can be difficult, it will pass. It will be
Yes.
over. It's
Yeah.
it's a point in time in the journey of the rest of your life, and it will pass. And if you want to just get through it and wake up in January, that's fine too.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to add to what you were saying about relationships, because if you have, say, lost someone, there's other people in the family that's impacted that are going through a different grief stage to you. So it's not, it might not just be you, if that
Mm.
makes sense. It might be everyone
Yes,
that's around you.
unlikely. It's
It's
gonna just be
unlikely, isn't it? It could happen, but it is unlikely. But it could be that you have less people in your life, that you live on your own, and there is that as well, and then that nurturing piece, that looking after yourself, that I think that is really important as well. And what I was thinking about was boundaries. That's when you were speaking about that. I remember last year was our first Christmas without Oshan. Um, and I remember clearly saying to people, this is all I've got. This is the version of me. I'm not going to be doing, I don't think I did presents. I didn't do, yeah, I didn't do I did some presents, but I managed the expectations with friends. So I looked at what was ahead of me and I prioritized, and I clearly just got rid of a lot of stuff that was going to stress me out and that was going to take that energy. Because I remember from therapy, my therapist saying, like, you are running a marathon every day. So, like, I thought, I can't do the marathon and Christmas
No.
because you've got very little resource left anyway. Your reserves are low when you're grieving anyway. And then you add Christmas onto that and you're just going to blow. So, yeah, I decided to make less effort. And it's different for us because we did only have two Christmases with Oshan, and one was in the hospital, and the other one we spent it in a hospice. He's not been in my Christmas for a long time. Like a good friend of mine has just lost her dad. So he's always been in her Christmas. So it's very different. But for them, they have the memories. And for me, I have the what ifs, the empty chair, that what would it have looked like? And
Yeah.
I think one is not better than the other, and they're just
No.
different. Do you know, they're just
Yeah.
different. So that nourishment of what you eating, what are you drinking, what choices are you making that are nurturing you, that are kind choices, that are loving choices.
Yeah.
And that self-love piece is really, really important
Yeah.
in that time. But yeah, I think, yeah, being cleared about your boundaries, getting rid of the stuff like that doesn't serve you. And I think there's something around traditions as well. Do you know, like people have holiday traditions and they have traditions in. I know Dave's kids have teas on Christmas Eve. I don't know why. That's just their family tradition. And they like lots of families have little things, don't they?
Yeah.
And I was reading a post on LinkedIn from a bereaved mother, and they've not done them traditions since their daughter died. And I think that's down to the individual, really, is around asking yourself, how are you going to be with them traditions? And how are they going to be nurturing and looking at, and how can you look after yourself?
Mm.
Do you know?
Yeah. Absolutely. Grief is it's an initiation into like new territory, isn't it? You can't not go through it almost. It will like alter you and
Mm,
how you view things, and as you said, learning boundaries and yeah, changing traditions and having to yeah, manage conflict, but also can be a time for like shedding, because
mm,
sometimes there might have been things that you weren't, I don't know, maybe brave enough to say you didn't want to do before.
mm.
Like, I'm not saying grief, we've talked about this, the grief pass.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna dine out on that pass forever because I know. But it is. It's like, yeah. But I think
Mm.
that rawness of grief,
Mm.
you I am way braver. Way
Yes.
braver.
Yeah.
Like I've had something that happened to me that really shows me the fragility of life.
Yeah.
So I'm a bit like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to say that. I'm going to need that for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think to the people that are around you, clearly saying, this is all I've got. This is the version you're going to see. This is who I am today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and the problem is if your family with you are grieving too, they might not be able to give you what you need. I think
Yeah.
that is a big thing. Because obviously me and Dave both lost Oshan, and I have got a lot from my friends. Not saying
Yeah.
Dave hasn't been able to, well, there's been times where he hasn't been able to give that to me because he's grieving himself. That's why a lot of couples with bereaved children do split up, because
Mm.
the person you'd lean on the most is hurting as well, do you know?
Yeah.
So I think almost like if this was my first, well, what I did really, if this is your first Christmas, um, getting a team together, you know,
Mm.
getting a clang, people that can support you, that might not
Yeah.
be in your house, might be out of your house, but someone like your 3 o'clock in the morning people, do you know,
Yeah.
the people,
Yeah.
your friends.
Yes.
And also if there isn't, if you haven't got people close to you that you can feel that you can talk to, there is charities. There's always someone that can help you. There is always
Yeah.
someone that you can speak to.
Yeah. Definitely. I think that it's almost like planning your escape routes,
Mm,
if it all gets a bit too much. Um, yeah, particularly maybe on the day, or things might come up unexpectedly, might not be Christmas Day itself, it might be other times. But yeah, I think that if the person you've lost is in the family, I definitely felt like my friends were my safe place. My work was my safe place as well. The things that weren't connected to my family were sometimes the safest of places. So yeah, I definitely think having your safe people that you
mm,
can turn to is really, really important.
yeah.
Mm.
And in our next episode, we're going to talk about joy and talk about all the things that you can do that helps us with our grief. I think I'd like to touch on them now, and then the next episode we'll explore them a little bit deeper. So it's Christmas time. It's your first Christmas without the person that you love and you've lost. What kind of tools and activities can you do to make you feel, I'm not going to use the word better because that's the wrong word. I think I think I'm going to use the word comfort to make you feel to make you feel a little bit more comfortable.
Mm.
I can
Yeah,
I think that's the right word, because it's not, oh, I feel better now. It doesn't work like that. But what
yeah,
can you do to make yourself feel more comfortable and safe? Do you
yeah,
have any do you have
yeah.
any tips?
Make yourself feel more comfortable and safe. Well, I think as we just said, having your safe people,
Mm,
having, knowing those backup plans. What are the things that like physically make you feel good? So whether that's like having a warm bath or having particular foods, or is there music or a film that you like to watch? Or is it going to a particular place, getting outside? I mean, these things I would think about at Christmas anyway. I need to get outside on Christmas Day. By the time the afternoon comes, I need to get out that door. There's a lot of indoorness going on, isn't there? So yeah, what are the things that that help you to feel well generally? Um, but yeah, places, people, and music, food, films, whatever it is that makes you feel more you, I think.
yeah. So you know the stuff that turns your light on, really, do you
Mm,
know? And it's that having them that place to reflect, really quiet time. And also, I quite like just being sad. As in, like, sometimes I'll just think, I'm going to have 15 minutes looking at videos and looking at photos, and I'm going to have a big cry.
mm,
And I need that. So I think going to, if I'm thinking about someone that is got their first Christmas, if they want to sit there and look at old photos and that's what makes them feel, I don't know, that makes them feel comfortable, or they need to do that, that's what they need to do,
Yeah,
you know?
it's the way of reconnecting, I think, isn't it? You know, we're trying to find a way of like comfort. It's a way of reconnecting, and I think that when you were saying that, we're looking at photos, that might be, yeah, on your own, or that might be a really nice way to connect with your
Yeah.
family or the person you've got. You might want to reminisce. You
Mm,
know, it can be a time where you might want to remember the person and share stories and,
mm.
oh, they would have enjoyed this. You know, it can be a really lovely way of reminiscing and reconnecting with people as well. So yeah, I think what you're saying there is about, you know, it's not avoiding your grief, because I think
No.
Christmas can be about, oh God, you know, we can't bring down the moods and all of that. Like we sort of might have to put it to one side to get on with Christmas. But really, it can be about us making space for our grief in Christmas. Because that can be stressful, can't it? Having to put it to one side
Mm.
and pretend and go along with things. So yeah, maybe making space for your grief. It might
Yeah.
be listening to sad songs, or you say looking at photos, but yeah, actually making space for it, inviting it in, and yeah, not being afraid of that. And whether that is you need to do that for yourself, but if you can do that with someone else who gets it, who's part of it, that could be a really comforting thing.
Yeah, definitely something, and I love that reminiscing. We often talk about past Christmases at Christmas in my family, and it will involve most of the people are dead. We're
Yeah.
talking about grandparents, we're talking about people that have passed. So, and this year we talked a lot about the last 2 years of Oshan's life. We had the last two Christmases have been very weird for us, you know?
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I think I love what you said there about not putting it in a box, because this is who you are now. This grief is a part of you. Um, and all is welcome. And again,
mm,
having conversations, if you can, with the people around you to say, do you know, like I often cry. I've cried today in this podcast. It just tears will come. Um, and I'm gonna cry just to let you know. I may do. I do cry. It is
mm.
sad. Don't. I think we're so. Sometimes people are so nervous of fully showing up, and we are also not very good at holding people that are fully showing up as well.
Yeah,
So it depends on the sort of style of your family, really, to know how
yeah,
vulnerable and open you can be.
yeah,
But yeah, to pretend is exhausting. And if you do have to pretend, if you have got a family that don't do feelings, which
yeah,
there are many,
yeah,
just maybe spend less time there. Do you know?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think
absolutely.
that's sometimes maybe you might have gone away for 2 days to stay with relatives. Maybe you could just go for one day, or maybe you could just go for lunch. Or again, it's looking at your Christmas and going, right, what do I need, and what will help me, and how can I prioritize, and how can I
Yeah,
make this easier than as easier as I can, really.
yeah. Full permission to use that grief pass.
Oh, yes, the grief pass, yes,
Yes,
that I've been
because
dining out on.
100%. Because, you know, if you say to someone that you don't want to do something because you're grieving, can't really argue with that, can they?
No, they can't. They can't. It's very effective. It is very
It
effective.
is. So it's
And
an
and
opportunity
yeah,
to not
it
to
is.
not do the things that perhaps you haven't wanted to do for a long time.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Liberation.
mm,
Yes,
I think
definitely.
that's going to lead us nicely into our next episode.
Totally. And I feel like we're ending with giving you full permission to use your grief pass this Christmas. So please
Yes.
do that. It is highly effective. It has 100% strike rate of success in my experience.
Yes.
And it's a, one of the, well, if there's any benefits, well, we can talk about that in another podcast, really, the silver linings of this thing that happens. But yeah, sometimes, but actually, sometimes it is the truth.
Yes.
Sometimes it really is the truth. I
Yeah.
cannot do this. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. And that takes a bit of bravery and a little bit of self-inquiry to go,
Mm,
do you know what? I'm going to say no here.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
totally fine. So you do you. Lovely. Have you got anything to add before I say goodbye to everyone?
No, I think that's a really good note to end on.
Yes, you do you this Christmas. And if you like this podcast and you don't know anything about us, you can subscribe to Love Shortage by subscribing as you normally do on your podcasts. And also, I'll put on the show notes if you are interested to know more about Grief Disco, you can join our mailing list and then you can see if we are going to be grief discoing near you. We have two next year. We got one in Cardiff in February and one in Frome in March. So, yeah, watch this space and thank you so much for listening. And we are sending you all the love. Thank you. Bye.